Song Shuan hated the taste of tobacco. He put down his pipe, tossing it carelessly onto the floor, shattering it. Immediately a servant appeared to collect the broken pieces. Song Shuan no longer needed such things to entertain him. He had something far better now. Muttering about ungratefulness, he descended the stairs and passed through a locked gate, arriving at the hidden dungeon. There, a crumpled figure resembling a man lay sprawled on the cold tiles. Opening the cell, Song Shuan stepped closer, tilting his head in amusement. In a soft, almost tender tone, he spoke to the prisoner. "My dear Shen Wei, you can make this stop any time. Just tell me who helped you escape, and I'll let you rest." These words were hollow, but it amused him to imagine Shen Wei taking the bait. Shen Wei knew better. He understood the Emperor's nature. Despite the pain he endured, Shen Wei showed no sign of obedience. Instead, he spat blood at Song Shuan's feet, a bold move for someone in his state. The Emperor's face darkened, displeased. He gripped Shen Wei's chin, his gaze cold and harsh. "Is this how you repay my kindness?" Though his voice was soft, it held an unmistakable threat. He released Shen Wei abruptly, savoring the hatred in his prisoner's eyes. It thrilled him. Deciding to leave for a while, Song Shuan turned to a guard. "Teach him a lesson while I'm gone," he ordered, before happily attending to imperial matters. That night, Shen Wei gazed at the limited view of the night sky from his small, chained-up cell window. His body was covered in bruises, yet he never screamed or cried, refusing to give the Emperor the satisfaction. By morning, Song Shuan strolled through the palace halls with a patient smile. He wasn't in a rush. His favorite person awaited. Arriving at the secret prison, he stepped in, noting Shen Wei's defiance had not wavered. Song Shuan's gaze lingered over Shen Wei's beaten form, chained to the wall, head barely lifted to meet his eyes. The Emperor found this determination strangely appealing. Stubbornness in the face of so much suffering. "I've given you every chance to cooperate, yet you still resist. Why?" Song Shuan's gray eyes sparkled with both curiosity and amusement. What kept Shen Wei going? Shen Wei lifted his head, his dark blue eyes brimming with hatred. He smirked, the satisfaction of seeing the Emperor's slight disappointment clear. "If you can't figure it out, go kill yourself." Song Shuan's expression remained impassive. "Such high expectations, yet you offer nothing in return," he remarked coolly. He reached out, brushing Shen Wei's cheek, his fingers trailing down to his neck before gripping tightly. "I wonder what it will take to break you." Shen Wei met his gaze, daring him to follow through. Death seemed like a release, almost a relief. But he knew the Emperor wouldn't waste him that easily. Shen Wei was his only true entertainment. Amused by Shen Wei's defiance, Song Shuan chuckled and let go. "You have an interesting sense of humor," he said dryly. "But don't worry, I'm not going to kill you just yet." With that, he left the cell and returned to his study, pouring himself a glass of wine. As he sipped, Song Shuan mused over Shen Wei's words. "If you can't figure it out, go kill yourself." "Interesting," he murmured. "Is he really immune to death threats?" Shen Wei's life was a never-ending nightmare. Born the illegitimate son of a powerful noble, he had been condemned from birth. His father, having had a scandalous affair with a prostitute, left her to raise Shen Wei alone until her demands for hush money ended with her murder. Terrified of discovery, the noble reluctantly took in the child, seeing him only as a burden and treating him with cold contempt. Shen Wei grew up as the black sheep, scorned by siblings and servants alike. Though he was strikingly handsome and displayed remarkable dignity and refinement, none of it mattered. He wasn't legitimate. As the noble's fortunes declined, he spiraled into debt and looked for a way out. His solution? Sell his unwanted child to the Emperor as a means to buy time and maybe even favor. Under the silver moon, Shen Wei's dark gaze was fixed on the cold dungeon floor. Emperor Song Shuan observed him, intrigued by Shen Wei's resistance. "Your resilience is impressive," he said, a touch annoyed, "but do you really think it will matter?" Song Shuan leaned down, fingers brushing Shen Wei's bruised face. "Are you hoping for rescue?" he mocked, eyes cold. He hated Shen Wei's silence. Why did Shen Wei never respond? Did he not know that he consumed Song Shuan's every thought? "What's on your mind?" Song Shuan whispered, leaning closer. Shen Wei turned away in disgust, breaking the Emperor's hold. The Emperor's gray eyes narrowed with frustration. How could Shen Wei not see he belonged to him? Just then, Song Shuan noticed something odd. Shen Wei was feverish. Despite his defiance, the dark-haired man's face was flushed. The Emperor's fingers pressed against his captive's forehead, and he realized Shen Wei had a high fever. "You're ill, aren't you?" Song Shuan's tone was harsh, hiding the faintest trace of concern. Annoyed at himself, he ordered the guards to treat Shen Wei's fever. Yet, even in weakness, Shen Wei ignored him, clinging to consciousness for one reason. Someone he cared about, someone precious he yearned to see again. The guards roughly forced medicine into Shen Wei, leaving him barely conscious. Later, Song Shuan returned, watching him in the silent cell. Shen Wei stirred awake as cold water splashed over him, the guard's way of mocking him. Wet and bruised, Shen Wei glanced at the sunrise, longing for freedom and the warmth of his beloved Ahuo. When Song Shuan entered again, his expression was unreadable as he approached Shen Wei. "I hope you're feeling better," he said quietly, trailing his fingers along Shen Wei's bruised skin. For a brief moment, Shen Wei's gaze softened as he looked out the window, and his hardened expression gave way to a rare glimpse of peace. Caught off guard, Song Shuan felt a pang of jealousy, though he concealed it. "You seemed, distracted." His voice softened as he leaned close, fingers grazing Shen Wei's face. But the captive turned away, coldly telling him to leave. Song Shuan's frustration simmered, but he forced a mask of indifference as he left, lingering outside the cell door. Within, Shen Wei stood and strained toward the barred window, his mind far from the dark cell. "Ahuo, my love," he murmured, voice tinged with longing. Hearing this, Song Shuan clenched his fists, a sudden wave of jealousy and possessiveness tightening around him. Another name, someone else Shen Wei thought of with such tenderness. Song Shuan's blood boiled. He was not willing to share. Back in his chambers, he scrawled a letter. The Emperor had made a decision. Shen Wei belonged to him, no one else. Song Shuan's eyes sparkled with a mix of amusement and malice as he read through the details of Ahuo. A smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth, his gaze narrowing as his grip on the scroll tightened. Ahuo's full name was Wen Ahuo. She had an ordinary appearance, blonde hair, hazel eyes, tan skin. Coming from a middle-class noble family, she was of a lower status than Shen Wei. Though not striking, her actions spoke volumes. Ahuo had gained a reputation across high society, and was spoken of by both men and women, often with disdain. She managed to capture Shen Wei's attention by carefully crafting an image of innocence and grace. Knowing he preferred elegance, Ahuo wore longer dresses and caked her face in makeup to appear more refined. Her plan worked. Shen Wei enjoyed her company, and eventually fell for her charms. "Her plan succeeded, but she's reckless," Song Shuan muttered, tossing the scroll aside. Despite her act, Ahuo continued to chase men of higher status, seeing Shen Wei as a mere stepping stone. The Emperor's irritation grew. Shen Wei, blinded by Ahuo's deception, failed to see her true nature. Song Shuan could use this to humiliate Shen Wei, but it would only harm his own pride. Turning to a nearby guard, he ordered, "Hire someone to end her." In the following days, Song Shuan refrained from visiting Shen Wei, filling his time with indulgences and distractions, yet his thoughts continuously drifted back to him, haunting his every moment, even with the company of his concubines. One night, a concubine lay beneath him, her cries echoing through the chamber, yet he felt nothing. He pictured blue eyes dark and intense, Shen Wei's eyes so beautiful and alluring. Frustration overwhelmed him, and he abruptly ended their encounter, dismissing the sobbing woman without a second thought. Alone, he poured himself wine and sank onto the bed, his thoughts consumed by Shen Wei. No matter what he did, he couldn't escape the pull, the longing. His heart raced whenever Shen Wei looked at him, even with hatred. It didn't matter, so long as Shen Wei belonged to him. With Ahuo gone, Shen Wei had no reason to leave the Emperor. Late that night, drunk and restless, Song Shuan found himself wandering to the dungeon where Shen Wei slept. He dismissed the guards and entered, taking in the sight of the man sleeping on the cold floor. In the dim moonlight, Shen Wei's pale skin and serene expression were captivating, drawing Song Shuan in. Without thinking, he leaned down and pressed his lips to Shen Wei's, tasting him, craving him. Song Shuan wanted more, his hands roaming over Shen Wei's form as he lingered, unable to stop himself. Yet he abruptly pulled back, realizing his obsession, his hunger. Shen Wei mumbled a name in his sleep. Ahuo. Hearing that name brought jealousy and rage. How could Shen Wei still think of her? Shen Wei, Song Shuan whispered desperately, his voice a soft confession. I love you. For a moment, he imagined what Shen Wei's reaction would be. Surprise, anger, disgust. But he couldn't bear to face it. Song Shuan composed himself, leaving the dungeon, shaken by the depth of his emotions. The next morning, Shen Wei rose early to see the sunrise. Today was Ahuo's birthday, and he cherished the memory of her love for Dawn. She had said it was a new beginning, a chance to leave the past behind. A faint smile crossed his lips as he murmured, Happy birthday, my love. Just then, footsteps echoed, and Song Shuan appeared, his dark robes glinting with golden embroidery. The Emperor's gaze fixed on him, unsettling and triumphant. My dear Shen Wei, Song Shuan said softly, stepping closer. Today is a special day, isn't it? Shen Wei's heart sank, his pulse quickening with dread. He couldn't look away from Song Shuan's smile, each step filling him with a foreboding sense of doom. What have you done? Shen Wei whispered. Song Shen leaned in, his voice a quiet taunt. I sent her to hell. A thud was heard. Shen Wei saw something roll his way. A head. Her head. The dark-haired man's pupils widened, his breath ragged, and his heart clenched at the sight. With all the exhaustion from the constant physical abuse, he found his vision went blurry and then black.